It's really difficult to this day to describe this verbally, this experience, because it was so beyond, it transcends language. It's not something that I can just, speak about. But the felt sense was that I no longer existed, and yet here I was. And that I was part of everything, and that everything was part of me.
You are listening to Terra Signals, presented by Normal Paranormal. I am your host, Justin Danforth. Hannah Lee Jones is a poet and a nomad whose adventures have taken her all over the desert Southwest in search of Jack Kerouac's timeless dear love of everything. Born in Camden, New Jersey to parents who are Korean immigrants, she worked in marketing and outreach for higher education and nonprofits before setting out on the road. Her book of poems, When I Was the Wind, explores the challenges and lessons of that journey and has won the Eric Hoffer Award, the first Horizon Award for Outstanding Debut Books, taken gold honors in the Nautilus Book Awards and IPPY Awards bronze medalist. She also runs Primal School, a coaching resource devoted to literature and ideas, encouraging people to lead lives of greater courage using innate wisdom from within. Her writing has been published in numerous journals and social media outlets, and she joins us from Silver City, New Mexico.
Thank you so much, Justin, for having me. It's great to be here with you.
Now, we talk a lot offline about all sorts of different topics, from the future to technology to writing to art, creativity. How do you keep your sanity with all these endeavors that you're involved with?
I do find it very challenging in times like now when there's so much happening in the world, right? With all of the chaos that we're experiencing, the crises, both in terms of our collective energy, our mental health challenges, climate change, if you believe in that, the fires around the world, the one that recently happened in Maui, which really hit me at a personal level, and through these kind of convulsions, right, that we're experiencing in the collective as well as individually. I find that for me, showing up with presence has really been presence as a PRESENCE. Yeah, and that full sense of bringing your whole self to this moment, right here, right now, has been the ultimate tool in helping me to navigate the things that show up in my life. And I think that when we are in difficult relationships or dealing with stressful jobs or confronting any number of challenges, ultimately, I think the ultimate resource that we have is our breath, our bodies, and our trust in ourselves. And and so I think it's come down to just being here now. And Eckhart Tolle, the author who wrote "Be Here Now," spoke about this eloquently in his book, and it really changed my life. And I think it's become my mantra.
One of these things that I see pop up in your work is control, its role in our lives, the way we cling to it, the way we use it over others, and how this illusion of control kind of usurps everything from society to our sense of happiness. Um, but for creative people, sometimes we need that control, right? When you were in this situation, this life blow up, you kind of had to give up control.
Mhm.
And that decision was kind of like made for you. Yeah, why don't we kind of set the stage there and let the audience know where you're coming from, your origin story?
Sure. Yeah, that's big. This theme of control, I love that you bring it up because I come from a household where there was so much control, and that was the dominant energy. It was the paradigm that shaped my early childhood, and therefore my how I showed up to the world in my 20s and 30s as I was coming of age, finding my way in the world, getting married, starting a career. And I think that so many of us are adapted to this way of being that is ultimately about um, efforting and about exerting control over the things in our lives that we want to manifest. We work towards an end result. We're taught to achieve, to make good grades in school, to please our parents, to not make waves, and so coming up under a parent who was, I think, it's difficult to say this, on the air, but it simply is true. My experience of my single parent, my mother, with whom I came up, um, was abusive, and so there was so much control, and receiving and being victimized by that level of control that pervaded my early childhood experience. I then became a controlling individual myself, and when I had my crisis in my late 30s, that then led to me taking this journey, and then ultimately writing this book of poems. I think I had to relinquish that control, the control that I had been taught, and that had become such a part of the way I show up, and to step into a full release of that control, I had to learn the art of surrender, which really ties in with what I said at the beginning of this interview, which is about the the art of presencing oneself, of being here now, and accepting the things that are happening to us, um, and acting within a certain framework of acceptance. We have to look at what's happening, and while also we're accepting what's happening at the same time that we are making choices, right? We it's that's different than control. I think it's intention. I think it's showing up with the skills that we have, and with mindfulness, and with responsiveness and adaptability, which is different than control. And it's a skill that we're not born with. I believe that we learn it as we come of age, and um, as we also meet the challenges and crises that life inevitably throws at us, and we cultivate an ability to release control while we are also dancing with the things that life hands us. So there is a theme that I'm very interested in, which is the theme of warriorship, and I've been reading about it quite a bit in my explorations of Taoism, which is a philosophy and a way of life that really changed my life. That has helped me to hold this beautiful kind of skill of embracing paradox, where invariably in life there are many things that can be true at the same time. We can be in crisis, but also still in control. We can come up under an abusive parent in a home full of chaos, and still be empowered and lovable, right? And so someone can love us and still be mean to us, right? We can hurt others and still care about them. Yeah. So these are just a few examples of the ways that we don't have to go into that black and whiteness of control says, you know, it's either going to be this way or that, right? Whereas releasing it helps us to embrace the totality of the experiences that life gives us. So I think that if there's any one thing that I learned from this crisis that occurred in my late 30s, which was that my husband and I, we were happily married, and we were cruising along, and things were seemingly going well on the surface. And then sometimes, and I think anyone who has had a midlife crisis has had the experience of being um, rocked by a mystery, not even really knowing what exactly is causing this convulsion, this crisis, these things that happen. Maybe someone has an affair, which is kind of what happened in my marriage. There was infidelity, and a sense of discontent, a deep sense that something was not going right, and that something needed to change. And in that was a relinquishing of the control.
We tend to talk about themes on the show that are rather scary,
Hmm.
but stepping out of your comfort zone is perhaps the scariest thing of all. And you did that right after this situation took place. You went out to the desert and you lived out there for several years, right?
Hmm. Yeah,
It wasn't just a comfortable environment in the desert. You lived out of your van in the desert, right?
that's right. It was the 2007's Toyota Sienna, which I'm still driving to this day, and it's got a lot of miles on it. And I also bought this tiny house that had a little wooden tiny house, 11 by 5 tiny house that became my office and my little writing studio. No plumbing. My kitchen was a table basically, and a bunch of water jugs, and and I started off in Moab, Utah, which is one of the harshest environments in the lower 48. It's extremely barren but beautiful desert that is known for its gorgeous, gorgeous red rock canyons as well as intense windstorms and sandstorms. And to go out into that from living in the Pacific Northwest, which is a country filled with lakes and the sea and with evergreen forests, all of this gentle, very mild, temperate weather to the desert, which is so barren, right? Was a big leap, and it's one that was inspired by a visit that I took, and I just fell in love with this landscape that was cooking me alive and was so difficult to be in, and yet somehow, and again, here's the paradox, right? I was drawn to it, and I knew that I had to be there. So, so the choice to be there, when I look back on it, I think we live in a very comfortable society where we not only are have AC, right, and we have the warmth of heating in the winter, all these technologies that have have in some ways insulated us and sterilized us, to life at a level that is very bodily but also psychic. We we consume so much media, right, and become and the phrase is really Pink Floyd, comfortably numb to life, which is gritty, it's uncomfortable, it deals us things that we don't want sometimes. Um, and it's more metaphoric where it's not just about physical discomfort, but I think emotional discomfort too. And I think when I took that journey and I went into the desert and started living this way, what I didn't know at the time was that I was seeking to release myself from not only physical comfort, but emotional comfort, where I had only embraced all that was predictable and therefore boring in my life, right? I mean, you cease to grow at a certain point when things become so comfortable that there's no growing to be done, no challenges to be had, right? There are no fights, there's no friction to be able to usher you into the next phase of your life where you are starting to see dimensions of yourself that you didn't know existed. How could you see that without having something hit you, right? And knowing what you're capable of. So for me, it was a physical test, but it was also very much a spiritual one, and
Hmm.
I'm glad I did it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think people hearing that will also kind of be encouraged. I mean, they may not go right out to the harshest climate on earth, but
Right.
is still the concept, the idea behind it of just getting us away from the comfort zones that we kind of construct in our lives that kind of prevent us from growing, from maturing, from learning. And you learned a lot out there. I mean, you were documenting this journey as you were going through it on your Instagram. And that's how we first connected, which I thought was absolutely incredible. The stuff that you were revealing and sharing, it was encouraging.
Yeah, I'm so blessed to connect with you because there's a dimension to that story that I was sharing that drew people like you into my life. And this is a blessing and gift of social media for all the things that we don't love about social media. We also encounter people who are incredible and who resonate with the things that we care about, right? And in my case, it was a life of authenticity in which we are not lying to ourselves about what we want, who we are, what our wounds are, what our shadows are, what we struggle with, right? Um, Again, moving away from that overly sanitized way of being in our lives that is about for a certain level of perfectionism, right? Where we curate and we even fabricate a certain image of ourselves online sometimes, right? And I loved that I could kind of let everything hang out in my storytelling. Oh, I posted about my roof blowing off one Christmas
Yeah.
because I was driving down the highway and I forgot to latch it down because it was one of those roofs that opened up, and I was going at 50 on the highway, and the wind took it and deposited it on the highway and took my solar panel with it, right?
Oh my gosh.
And to not have a source of shelter that Christmas was really difficult, right? And I thought I could share that and share what I was learning about myself, about about handling myself when difficult things like that happen, how to stay positive, how do we survive, right? And that not just in that physical sense, but how do we take care of ourselves in tough times, right? How do we rely on each other? Because so much help came to me during that time. I learned how to receive love in ways that I had never known as a child. So the blessing in the crisis, right? The gift in the wound, so to speak. So there was so much there, and I'm glad that you and I crossed paths in this life because I know that you are someone who has been on that path as well, connecting with people who of all walks who are deeply in that place of searching and the mystery as well, right? It's the wider field. How do we exist in not just in this world with each other, but in the universe? so so that's a theme that you're interested in. I know you're really passionate about, and I deeply care about that as well. And I'm glad that yeah our paths crossed.
Yeah, everything, I know it's cliche, but everything happens for a reason, for sure. But it kind of brings up questions of, is there such a thing as destiny or
Mm.
paths that are already created for us? How do we choose our destiny? How do we know that we aren't guided along by some sort of higher power or higher being? Is there something beyond this, an unseen realm? Even though we can't quite grasp it or understand it, have you seen glimpses of it that could indicate its existence?
100%. I do not consider myself to be someone who is. Um, came up in a religious family, right, and was deeply indoctrinated in the Christian church. So I moved away from that in my 20s and 30s, and eventually considered myself to be one of those cliche people who call themselves spiritual instead of religious.
Right, right, right. Yep.
And then, I didn't even really understand the full import of what that meant until I started to then explore my healing from the trauma that I had experienced as a child. And as part of that healing, I started to take plant medicine. And when I began that process in Moab, I I was ushered into this powerful sense that this world that we can see with our five senses is not all there is. And that when we come alive to this world with our five senses, though, and we amplify our relationship with it, we become a little bit more porous under um, the effects of these medicines that you could call them psychedelics and theogens, right? We start to expand and see that we have see that the world is bigger, but we also see how beautiful it is. And then we begin to access maybe a sense of our relational power, right? And there's a witnessing voice that comes forward that feels to be of you, but is also not you. And when that happens, you realize God is beyond anything that can be written about, even in the most beautiful poetry, right? Like we can experience God, and that is the ultimate sense of God that I have been able to access um, in my experiences, not just on this medicine, right, that I started to take, which was mostly psilocybin, but it was also just by being in this wild environment of the desert, where I began to have these encounters with what David Abrams, who's an amazing writer, he calls it the more than human world, and that the more than human world can consist of wild animals, the raven who ate my oatmeal one morning, and that that sense of being able to relate to that also takes us into um, it's a connectedness, and that feels to be none other than an experience of God. But we lose that again, right? When we're protected, when guarded, when we shield ourselves from nature, wild nature, and so if ever I could speak of divinity as something that I've experienced, it's been in those wild places, because we are indistinguishable from nature. We are nature, and but we have to remember that by going out into her, right, and experiencing that. So
Hmm. So, going back to plant medicines, because I know there's a lot of negative stigma associated
mhm,
with them. The first one being, well, okay, this is all beautiful and such that you had these divine experiences, but how do you separate fact from fiction, aka reality from hallucinations?
for sure. I think that my answer always to anyone who is skeptical about the power of these medicines to heal us is to trust in your own experience. Because if anyone has taken these medicines, and whatever it is, LSD, um, ayahuasca, it could be peyote, but and people are on a search. There is a powerful sense that people are on a search for meaning, and that sometimes they end up trying these medicines as a way to access that meaning, because life has become so meaningless that they have to do something drastic to enter it. But my answer has always been, what is your experience, and can you trust it? Can you trust in the veracity and the power of your experience to tell you what is true? Um, and and then you can immerse yourself in all of these facts and these data and the things that people are publishing in these scientific articles and what have you. But ultimately, I think what we can trust is the factuality of our own experience. And what I can say is that my own experience has shown me that life is big, and that's all I need, right? Yeah, and that is at the core of religions too. When the trouble I have is when anyone who believes something so strongly goes around trying to basically proselytize, right? And I did that even with medicine for a time, when I felt so powerfully that this was the thing that was going to save so many people, right? And because it had helped me so much. But that wasn't my job. It's no one's job. Our job is to have our own healing process and choose what works for us, and to trust in that.
One of the fears, I guess, that people have, with plant medicines is the bad trip.
Right.
And I know you had mentioned that at some points in our conversations that, ceremony and intent is vital to that, right? Surrounding yourself with the right people and the right environment is crucial.
Correct. Yeah.
What's the good protocol with that? I mean, do you need to be in a correct state of mind before you go down this road, or
Yes. I think I want to reference this great documentary that exists on YouTube. It's actually it was recorded by Joe Rogan of all people, and but he it was a movie called it's like 45 minutes long, and it's called DMT, the God Molecule. I think it's the God Molecule, and in it he speaks about as what he interviews all these people who are experts in the field of entheogens, and what comes from that is that I forget who it was that said this, but set and setting is extremely important, and that's just true whether you're doing a clinical study, or and injecting people with DMT, or having a just an experience on your own. That you need to be in a place that feels safe to you, because we are creatures of feeling, and I believe this in my core, is that plants, because they are of nature and they're therefore of us, like I said before, um, they are they have a certain reactivity to us. They're intelligent, and they respond to us, and so we are taking something that is responding to to what is in the field, right? And this is getting out there into some woo-woo stuff, but I really believe this because there was one time when I recently, actually, with my partner, that I tried to take some mushrooms, and we had recently had a bit of an argument, and it was my birthday, and we were sitting by the fire, and we were taking this medicine, and it was a low dose, maybe like a couple grams, which is maybe not a super low dose, but it's enough that you should start feeling the effects maybe within 20 minutes to a half hour after you take mushrooms. And then we were sitting and kind of looking at each other, being like, "Do you feel anything?" "Nope, I'm not feeling anything." And it was hilarious because every time I've taken it before, there has been potency, and the medicine has worked. It has given me that experience, but the what had happened was, and I believe this, was that I was angry, right? Emotionally, I was not in a space to be able to receive the healing that was to come from this medicine. So the medicine, if we can call her a goddess, she was like, "Nope, yeah, today's not the day for you. Why don't you come back and try another time?" Right? So, um, yeah, so I can go at great length about environment and how important it is that you be with people who feel safe to you, people that you preferably love. Personally, I really appreciate taking it by myself because I have come to trust myself with the medicine, and I see it as, in some ways, not unlike Lutheranism, where the teaching is you have a direct path to God. There should be no intermediary, no priest to be able to administer the sacrament, who's going to tell you whether or not you're saved. It's just you and God. And I really believe that to be true with these medicines. That has been how I've made it work for me, and where I've received the greatest benefit in terms of being able to access that healing that I've needed. Now, that being said, I've done medicine and ceremonies with teachers who have flown up from Peru, have held ceremonies outside of Santa Fe with the Native American Church. And those experiences have been profound and life transforming. Um, and there is something about that community as well that can be incredibly powerful, especially when you're sitting around a fire singing songs. So,
Whenever we have conversations and you say something interesting, I usually write it down. I do that with everybody, right?
oh, yeah. It helps a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. If I don't write it down, I usually forget it. But I have in my notes, at one point, I think you mentioned that at certain levels of hallucinogenics, you can witness your own death. Is that true?
I do not I do not have that empirical experience of being able to see that. In a great interview with what was his name? The man who wrote The Botany of Desire, Michael Pollan. He gave an interview where he spoke about seeing his own death while taking what they call a shamanic or heroic dose of mushrooms. And he said that I forget how he described it, but he was in the bathroom, and he saw his physical body explode into 1,000 post-it notes.
Oh my gosh.
And the way he said it was, and then I felt zero alarm at this occurrence. I watched myself die, and there was no alarm whatsoever that he felt at this watching himself turn into this into 1,000 post-it notes. And so the fact of one's death being something that is just simply is, right, that he felt no dismay or distress, or that this is just part of life, right? It was cool to hear about. I have never reached that level myself, probably because I have not taken a dose that high. Um, I I have the new frontier for me has been the DMT, where I have friends who have taken it and have had, yeah, have had the those truly psychically uh, God encountering, death witnessing experiences. And it is kind of, they call it the Mount Everest of psychedelics. And I think I fear going there just yet because some part of me is deeply not ready. And so I'm giving myself that time. But I have had the experience on higher doses of psilocybin of feeling very alone in the world, being in a space with maybe 6 or 7 other people and then watching them vanish, and then freaking out because where did everybody go? Am I have I crossed over into hell, right? And I someday I'll write about this experience in a memoir, but that my publisher is encouraging me to write. And but but that was probably the closest I've come to really feeling that sense of existential dread that sometimes accompanies the moment before death, right? But it is a door that so many people enter every day, thousands of us, right? That really it must not be all that bad.
Experiences with beings. I know that people hear about that a lot, is that they will see these entities emerge while using plant medicines. Have you ever experienced that?
I'm scanning right now to see whether I've had such encounters, and I do not recall having anything that has really put me in contact with supernatural beings, like beings that you would say are not of this realm. So, so I have encountered all kinds of beings who have come into my fields, including an antelope that I once wandered with for 20 minutes. But um, it's often during ayahuasca ceremonies that people report these kind of encounters with almost alien-like creatures. A lot of reports of serpentine creatures or tigers coming in and with messages for them. I have never had such experiences myself. I'm almost envious because because I do believe that when we have those experiences, those are they seem summoned, like a summoning of sorts, where we are being called to some sort of contact uh, with the wider field. They and Graham Hancock, the author, he has written about this in his book Supernatural, where he's interviewed, probably hundreds of people who have taken medicines and kind of explored some of the themes and the commonalities between people's narratives about their experiences on medicine. And there are themes, right? There are themes, and there is continuity, and there is a sense of we're not all there is. The movie Contact, right? If it's just us out here, then it's an awful waste of space. And and I don't think I have to even really have an empirical, actual personal experience with such things to believe that. I don't believe that we are all there is. Yeah, that there is more, and but perhaps the day will come, and yeah, yeah, it's fascinating to listen to your interviews with some of these folks who have had contact um, with those beings that come in and maybe seem to be asking something of us. Yeah, so
Well, can you unlock your mind without the use of plant medicines or any type of, aid of that nature?
well, so in my healing work, I have had the benefit of talking to some amazing friends who have directed me towards modalities um, that have a similar impact on the brain as psychedelics. So without the use of medicine, and one of those modalities is holotropic breath work, um, and and because I've never actually done it with the help of a guide, because oftentimes it's recommended that you sit with somebody who's going to monitor you while you do circular breathing, where you are basically not pausing between a deep inhale and your exhale. You are inhaling deeply and then you're exhaling, and you're doing that rapidly and repeatedly until you drop into that state where your brainwaves shift and you then start to have something akin to a psychedelic journey. And those breathwork journeys are incredibly powerful. They are also administered online sometimes by certain people. Um, in fact, there's a fellow named Michael. I forget his last name. Um, Michael is his first name. He's in Los Angeles, but his website is Breathwork Online, and I've been able to do a few sessions with him and his community of breathers around the world. And I know that people have really greatly benefited from the work that he's been sharing around this kind of accessible breath work that people can do online by coming together in these online sessions where on Zoom where people can breathe together, and that can be really energetically powerful because you know that all these other people around the world are breathing together, right? And yeah, and people report all kinds of different things that happen uh, from
Wow. I had never
from
heard about this.
yeah, you can check it out. Um, Everything from repressed memories coming up, being able to cry, just mourn and grieve past trauma, um, being catapulted out into the vastness of the universe and seeing things. It can vary. For me, none of that has actually happened. It's just more this kind of euphoric sense of um, a better and more intimate relationship that feels safe with difficult emotions, whether that's anger or um, grief about my past. There's a shift that happens internally, and so I think that people sometimes have a certain idea of how medicine is supposed to look, how it's supposed to work. That somehow, if they haven't had a huge cathartic experience in which they have healed all of their trauma or encountered a, a deceased loved one or had something really incredible breakthrough happen, that the medicine's somehow not working. And I really disagree with that. I think that the medicine will give you what it wants to give you, and that the key is trust in yourself and your experience, and just like I was saying, and then also letting go of how it's supposed to look, having your own trust around it, that you're having the experience that you're meant to have.
Going back to the desert, because you brought up an experience that I find very interesting. The antelope. You were wandering with an antelope for like 20 minutes, you said?
Yes, sir. And it was powerful. It was my first time taking medicine, so I was outside of Moab in these grassy, I guess you could call it, yeah, just these grasslands that north of Moab that go for miles. And I was camped there because we were at the time of year when there are so many people who tear up the land in their ORVs. Nothing against people who enjoy off-roading, but it's not one of my things, and the noise can be very awful. Yeah, so I really was kind of out there and camped alone, and still had cell signal to be able to call my person, who I told her I would be taking medicine and that I would be doing it for these hours, and that I would be doing it alone. And she's like, okay, sure. If you're going to go do that, just let me know, and I'll look in on you after. So I wandered. I went on this wander after taking a dose of, I think it was like 3 grams. So, and I went, I just wandered, not too far, feeling like if I couldn't find my way back, because it was evening, and I knew that the sun would eventually, um, that the sun would set, and that I would need to make my way back. So, but I did trust myself enough to know that my motor skills would be fine, even though I started walking very slowly, and there's almost like you get cold. Um, on psilocybin, and you you do have to be careful about how you're moving, because you do slow down. And I was trudging along and having a moment of grief where I was kind of thinking about some of the things that had happened in my childhood, and I was sitting with those feelings when this one this one being shows up, right. Glorious antelope, also known as pronghorn, um, and they're glorious. They're just beautiful creatures, because when you're walking behind them and you're seeing them run, right? They have these rumps that almost look like designed by nature to be targets, because they got these huge white rumps that seem to flash. And I was walking behind this pronghorn for um, maybe a couple miles, and it would run first. It would run ahead, and then it would stop, and then it would look at me, and I almost felt like Kevin Costner's character in Run with not Run with the Wolves,
Dancing with
and
wolves?
Dances with Wolves, yeah,
Dances with wolves, yep.
where he meets the wolf, and the wolf won't leave him alone, right? Because he has a connection with this one who feels a particular draw to him, and that was the felt sense that I got from this creature, that that seemed to know that I was not only was aware of my existence, but seemed to be dialoguing with me on some level, right? And maybe that's anthropomorphizing, but it did. There was a conversation. There was a sense that every few, maybe it was like a couple hundred feet, right? I would follow it, and it would stop, and then look at me again, and then until eventually I lost it and it was gone, right? So, and in that there was a gift, a sense that I had been given something to hang on to, that would anchor this experience, but moreover, that nature is us and loves us, and that we are in relationship always with it, right? Even if we don't quite know what is going on, because the language is not it's we're not using it's the language is not a language of the mind. It's one of the body and of the heart, right?
Being out there in the middle of nowhere, you probably witnessed some incredible things firsthand, like some incredible sides of nature. Tell us a little bit about that, because obviously, us in the suburbs and the cities, we don't experience that. I mean, that must have been some beautiful moments in your life, right?
Truly. Yeah. Yeah. I think one particularly memorable experience was when I was hiking alone in it was a Capitol Reef National Park in Utah. So one of the lesser known national parks. And that was the particular draw. I went there because it was quieter, you know. Oh no, it wasn't. It actually, excuse me, it was not Capitol Reef. It was Colorado National Monument. I'm remembering now. And I was on this hike alone, and then maybe it was about 6 miles, and the sun had set, so I was kind of scurrying back to the car. And it was not. I was not far from the trailhead, perhaps maybe like a mile, and I rounded this kind of, area that was like it was a cliffy area um that terminated, at the bottom of these steps that I was going to then scale to get to my car, um and I I rounded this cliffy bend to, start going up the steps, and I was stopped in my tracks by the sight of a huge band of bighorn sheep, and
Whoa.
they were as startled to see me as as I was shocked to see them. And they gave me this like deer in the headlights, like, whoa, we did not see you coming. So they were shocked, and I was shocked, and I stood there, and I just kind of, was so in awe of these beautiful creatures, and they looked at me, with their horns, and they had curvy horns, um and maybe there were a couple of younger, juvenile-ish bighorn sheep in this group, and the leader, the one who was, who had been walking ahead, um after maybe some moments, finally decided to cross the path in front of me, and I was able to get video of these guys crossing over into this field that was just, and to see that at the point, the hour in the day that's so numinous, where the sun has gone down, it's everything's glowing red. Um, the heat of the day is starting to dissipate, and then magic, was truly one of the moments of my life. So yeah.
Wow, amazing.
Mhm.
How can you interpret the signs from nature, from animals and plants, as guidance and wisdom and direction?
So we are story making creatures, right? And when someone says that you are making a story, they mean it in a demeaning way, like you're making things up. But what I've found in my work, doing things like shamanic journeys and medicine work, as well as just active imagination, where one does deep imagery, right? It takes a journey to go meet someone that they are summoning, into their field to have a conversation. That we are not, we're neither dreaming, although you could say, yeah, let's say that when we dream at night, we can definitely access dreamlike states while conscious and awake. The there's a certain interpretation of these experiences as being we're making things up, or or when we see something happen that feels like an omen or something that is more than just a coincidence, that it's easy for our reasoning minds to say, well, you're just making that up, or that feels, yeah, you know what, dismiss it as just a coincidence, right? Or you're trying to assign meaning where there is none. And I've received those critiques from people around me. And sometimes I've even leveled them at myself because I have doubted myself, right? But when we call in, when we are living in such a way that we are calling in a deeper relationship with everything around us, you start to kind of notice more. And and it's not that those things are just happening to you. I think that there is a dialogue that is happening non-verbally between us and the world that brings in experiences that can be magical. But we can't have those experiences unless we are open to them, right? Unless we are open to letting our minds go and being and resting in the a certain level of trust about our imagination and about our capacity to dream and our capacity to witness and to make meaning of our world, right? Because we are meaning making creatures. So when I see something happen, and something as simple as like a wood fern waving in the wind, right? Because the wood ferns tend to do this interesting thing. They wave when the wind moves. And the first time I ever saw that as a child, I remember thinking, that fern's waving at me. That's so cool. It's waving at me, you know? And there is a sense of enchantment and wonder that put me in a place of feeling like, oh, that there's a conversation here and that it's not just any fern doing its thing, you know? There was a sense of wonderment. And I think we lose that as we get older. And it's a state that we re-enter when we are re-enchanted, oftentimes with the help of these modalities that I think are now coming into popularity for the simple reason that we have lost contact with mystery and we need it. We hunger for it like we need food and water.
Yeah, and this awareness of nature that you're describing is similar to like the awareness of the paranormal. The more that we pay attention to it, the more it pays attention to us.
That's correct. Yeah.
Have you ever had any experiences in your life that you would deem strange or unexplainable?
Yeah, absolutely. And the one that really leaps to mind is, I guess you could call it an out of body experience that I had several years ago when I was in Utah camping. Nothing of any particular importance had really happened during this time. I was traveling with friends. We were going on hikes. We were eating good food, having a great time. I'm sleeping in my van one night, and um, I I woke up in the middle of the night and had it just stretched, you know, as one does when they're moving around, you know, and but then it turned out that this was not just any stretch. I found myself continuing to stretch, and to the point that my body started to feel like it was even bigger than my body, and then I had the sensation of almost some mysterious hand opening me down the middle, and this was not a painful experience. I felt myself being open down the middle, and my body being split, but not split. I was not being split apart, right? I was being opened, and um, and the stretch continued, stretch, and then the sensation of seeing pretty much every cell in my body enter the cosmos and feeling as if I did not exist anymore. My body was gone. Yeah. So there is this sense of it's really difficult to this day to describe this verbally, this experience, because it was so beyond, it transcends language. It's not something that I can just, you know, speak about. But the felt sense was that I no longer existed, and yet here I was. and that I was part of everything and that everything was part of me. And then that sensation lasted for a couple seconds, and then I was back in my body, and then I was wondering what the hell just happened. so and this was not on any sort of medicine, right? I had this experience, and I speak about it with so few people because I think that, again, like we were talking about, this I guess enlightenment thinking that is so much a part of Western civilization that tries to rationalize everything as being like, well, if you can't put that in a box and explain it with something that can be proven, that can be tested, then it didn't happen, right? Well, yeah, so that was one of those experiences, right? So yeah,
Wow, that's incredible.
and yeah, it's difficult to speak of, and it's going to be difficult to write about, but maybe someday I will sit down and write about it. So
Do you have any examples of how like dreams have either stopped you, saved you, or guided you in a decision in life?
yes, I continue to turn to my dreams. I have been working with my yeah, I've been working with my dreams for probably the last 7 or 8 years, journaling about them. Um, Jungian depth psychology is particularly receptive to the dream as a source of wisdom, and so I've read pretty extensively about dreams and their power and their potential to connect us deeper with our inner lives, and dreams as a particular way of actually speaking our psyche and our souls, if you could call it that. Our souls are that part of us that knows, speaking to us in a language that is ancient and that our ancestors, and that the wisdom traditions of the world even write about in their texts as being like, this is the mystery of the image, of the dream image, right? Is so powerful in guiding us into um, an awareness of what we need to be doing with our lives, how we want to live, what our deepest desires and yearnings are, and also in some ways what we're doing to ourselves. Because sometimes we make choices in our lives that take us down a certain path that is not us, and then we wonder why we have nightmares, right? Or we wake up and we go, "Oh, I had a dream that I was being chased by a tiger," and the language of a dream is so different than what our day world minds make out a dream to be. Even a dream of being sexually violated, just deeply disturbing as it is a dream that is not just about that particular thing. It's about violation at a larger level and the ways that we violate ourselves, for instance. So my work with dreams, even though it's really been personal and it's something that I've maybe helped others with on on a level that's in my coaching and spiritual work with people, I've been able to help them use their dreams to a certain extent to mine down into the depths of what is moving in their lives and how they might work with their dreams to better understand themselves. Um, for my part, I I think when I'm struggling, it's always to my dreams that I turn to better understand myself and the things that might be moving in my psyche, that because our egos are so strong and we are afraid to grow. There are ways that we are afraid to confront others and to speak our truth. um, when we do that, the things that we push down are almost like the beach ball that we like, if you're in a swimming pool, you push it down and that beach ball just wants to continue to pop up, right? It's like, dreams are ways that truth seems to want to surface again, right? And the psyche comes kind of knocking, being like, "Look at me. This is important stuff," And so when my clients maybe come to me with nightmares, and they say, "I had a really bad dream last night," I start to kind of rub my hands a little bit, and I think, "Okay, mind sharing it? Yeah, let's work on it together because there might be something really useful in that." So, um, yeah. So that's dreams for you. There's so much I could talk about with regards to dreams, though. They are their own language, and it's not a language that we are taught because because again we live in this rationalistic world view that really diminishes the power of the image and the symbol and the mystery of a dream that pretty much is like, by its very being is inexplicable, but also has a message. And to decode it, we have to actually um, access a part of ourselves that is non-rational. That, yeah, that is about playing with our sense of symbol, um, and I'm not articulating this well because I don't speak about this very often, but it's a different language entirely. Yeah.
You obviously offer a lot of guidance, a lot of video coaching, on the phone coaching. A lot of what you help people with is overcoming trauma, right?
That's right. And in particular, trauma of the kind that is that that we cannot run from because life itself becomes a way of like the things that happen to us are the things that we need to fully enter in order to heal, if that makes any sense. So life itself is traumatic, right? And so trauma's in the zeitgeist. Everyone's talking about it. Trauma, 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 and I think the fact is everyone has trauma, right? Just by having lived and gone through childhood. And then there is the trauma of living in these times when there is so much happening in our culture, and in the ways that we treat each other that can be deeply wounding. And um, my interest is in helping people cultivate the competencies and the skills to be able to navigate everything that life hands us, whether that's in the present or it's something that we're trying to heal from our past in order to fully show up as ourselves in this moment. And yeah, I do it using a video coaching tool called Marco Polo. And it's really transformed my life because there's something about recording a video text, because it's like texting, but you're sending videos to that person. And you see yourself talking, and it's a monologue, right? Because you're recording yourself talking. Um, and and when you know that message is going to be received by someone who sees you, and and a conversation starts to build over time. What I've discovered is that usually after about 30 days, there's something that happens, and it's so interesting. The the person, almost like their countenance and their energy and even the muscles in their face, they relax and they start to shift, and I don't think I can take credit for this. This is something that has to do with the platform and the self-witnessing that happens when you watch yourself and when you confront yourself in the mirror, so to speak, and you are recording yourself speaking, and you are speaking your truth in the presence of someone that you trust, right? And hopefully that person is me, if they're working with me and they trust me, right? But that I rely on that platform to do my coaching for that reason of like the self-witness that we all need. We need to confront ourselves, right? And in the mirror, look in the mirror and actually see the truth of who we are, which is beautiful. I mean, we all carry a lot of muck, right? Things happen to us that are so wounding, and there is so much pain and suffering. And I think I do draw in people who are oftentimes in excruciating amounts of pain, um, and really need help that sometimes conventional therapy can't give, because therapists, because of a certain professional wall that is necessary for them to be able to work at a level that supports the client and gives them what they need. Sometimes they hold something of themselves back from the process. So yeah, I do coach people, but I do it differently than therapy because it's personal, and I don't hold back parts of myself in order to connect with the person. There's a sharing of stories, and when we share our stories in a safe space, and we do it the way maybe our ancestors did it, sitting by the fire at night, um, there is safety, and then healing can then start to happen. So
For those of you listening, Hannah certainly doesn't keep anything. I mean, she bears it all. I mean, it's very evident in your work on your Instagram page, but all that risk and rawness, taught you a lot. And I think a lot of people can find comfort in that. And like you said, healing, right? But let me ask you this: what is healing and what isn't healing?
great, great, great question, Justin, and thank you so much for your kind words about about me and about how I show up in the world, and I do try not to hold anything back because healing, part of healing is rejecting no part of yourself, right? we we tend to hide those parts of us that are shameful to us, right? That we are like, ooh, I did this thing that I didn't feel so great about, you know. And there are many things that I did in my past that I still to this day carry shame about, but that in speaking it out, I'm able to heal it, and I'm able to also connect with others at a level that is deeper because they then can see that I am too, because we all are. Excuse me. But yeah, that I'm messed up too, right? They can see that I'm messed up too, and that we all are just by walking through this life together, bumping into things, yeah, getting hurt, right, and also doing things to one another and showing up in ways that we're less than proud of. I think healing is when we are truly healing. We are not necessarily getting better. I think in clinical terminology, we tend to speak of healing as like, oh, this wound, you know, it's healing over. The skin cells are rejuvenating themselves, so that we're getting better somehow. But that's not how I think of healing. To heal is not necessarily to make better, because we do sometimes get hurt again or do things that we regret and that we feel shame about. But is there a way that we can leave out no parts of ourselves, right, from the conversation about what is happening? And can we feel safe enough? Can we give ourselves safety with others whom we trust to reveal all our parts, right? And to hold them all as being part of us, including the parts that we don't feel so great about. Yeah, and in that there is such beauty because the empowered parts, the beautiful aspects of us, we can witness them too when we love one another. And where love exists, there's a full embrace of the whole person. It's not just I'm choosing this part of you to love because this is the part that I adore, and you listen to me, you cook for me. Yeah, we have a great physical relationship or something, right? But beyond that, is there an embrace of the aspects, the dirty parts, right? The gritty parts that we struggle with, that will not cause us to say this is a part of you that I reject, and so therefore I'm not going to be in a relationship with you. And so many of us in our society make that choice to exit a relationship because we cannot tolerate someone's shadow. And I think that we part of healing is also being able to confront our own shadows so that we can then develop a certain level of patience with the shadows that others are bringing into our lives. And to the extent that we can heal ourselves, then we can love another, right? And we can love their messy parts. So that's what healing is. I think it's really leaving out no parts, right? And loving all aspects of ourselves without condition.
So tell me a little bit about Primal School.
Yeah, Primal School is actually a blog that started off in 2016. I started interviewing poets about one poem they had written and asking them about their process. And these were beautiful conversations that I was mostly having for selfish reasons, that I was a poet in practice and wanting to learn the art and craft of writing a poem. And so it was partly for my personal education, but also in order to share it with people who are not taking that traditional track of going to get a master's degree in creative writing. So I did that for a time, and then my marriage blew up, and then I went out into the desert and had my adventure. And during that time, I started to re-envision Primal School as something that would be different, that would be about accessing and loving ourselves and getting to know ourselves better by creating a relationship between ourselves and the wild world that is within us, that is within our souls, but also in the world, right? And through means that are primal, because we are bodily creatures that need to be in nature, to be connected with the wild, and and I think that I'm still in the process of creating something with it that is meaningful for me and that feels like an effective offering to those who need it. But currently, it's really just a website and a coaching and mentoring offering that I'm actually about to launch in the next couple weeks here, and put it out to my primarily my Instagram community. You know, asking people if they want to work with me, and because I think that so much of my passion is working with people individually. So, and bringing these tools that you and I have discussed in this interview to an audience of people who are hungering for this particular form of medicine. So,
You have this, I mean, what you call the video coaching part of it is you call it 90 days to real freedom, right?
it's called 90 Days to Real Freedom, and it's something that I offered 3 years ago. It was 3 years ago that I offered it once on Instagram, and got to work with some amazing people. And I'm excited to do it again because I think very few things gratify me more than working with people individually and seeing the transformation that they undergo when they are able to love themselves, and give themselves that witness again, right? Of hearing one's story told aloud and having that be received, and doing that over a course of 90 days is actually, I mean, I've thought about this, extending it to something longer because the feedback that I've gotten from people is that it's only after the 90 days that they realize that they're just getting warmed up. so, so yeah, the process of personal transformation is actually lifelong. We all know that, and but the depth of learning that can happen in 90 days is pretty profound. So I'm looking forward to offering it again. It should be fun.
How can people get in touch with you? What's the easiest way? Your Instagram?
Yeah, great. It's primalschool.org is my website. And on Instagram, I'm on there as Hannah Written. So it's my first name, same forwards and backwards. And then written. So kind of similar to handwritten, but it's my name. And I'm on Facebook as well under the same handle, Hannah Written. But the page is Primal School. So
Primalschool.org. And we'll have links in the show notes to that and your Instagram account and your Facebook account as well. You have your poetry book, When I Was the Wind, and that was published not too long ago by June Road Press. How did that project come to be?
oh man, that's an amazing story. That I wish Sarah Arnold, my publisher, and it really is a one woman operation based out of Berwyn, Pennsylvania. That is a beautiful, beautiful press, small indie boutique thing that she started up, and the book, the evolution of the book is really incredible because I had decided quite a while ago that I was going to write poems and do it in my own funky way, which was posting everything to social media. Um, and I guess Sarah was quietly watching my posts because she never really engaged with any of my content, but she had been following me on Instagram because we used to be part of a writing group together some years ago, and and then she pops up in an email one day while I'm camping in New Mexico during the pandemic, and I remembered Sarah. I was very excited to hear from her, and she wrote me saying, "Hey, I've been noticing that you are posting all of these incredible stories to your Instagram, and I wonder if you'd be interested in doing a memoir because I have started a little publishing outfit, and it would be amazing to work with you." And I remember thinking, "Gosh, this is crazy," because I had just been thinking about approaching publishers or and weighing that against the possibility of even self-publishing a book of poems, and so so our conversation was about a memoir initially, and then we decided to warm up with a book of poems, and this book of poems, I think I never would have dreamed that it would go out into the world and do what it did, but I think that I really have to give Sarah a lot of credit for being such a devoted, hardworking publisher who really believes in our authors, and she brings an artisan mindset to every book that she publishes. And she's now, I think, on her sixth. Oh gosh, there are two books coming out this fall, by both by incredible authors, and she's on a roll, and I really just am so so proud of her. But I think I'm one of the few lucky authors in the world who can say that I have a publisher whom I deeply care about, and who cares about me, and who cares deeply about books as a living work of art, because her books are gorgeous. And I do take credit for my work, and the awards that have come to the book are tremendous honor, but I do believe so much of it has been this collaboration that I have with my publisher. So so it really is an amazing story, and it's a story of trust too, because I didn't really go out there and become a writer, especially these last few years, like writing the way I was writing, with the intent of publishing a book. But the book found me, and there's something in that I think is really beautiful, and that I'm profoundly grateful for.
Where can people get a copy of the book? Obviously, your website, primalschool.org, is the easiest way, right?
There's a link to my publisher's website that goes from my website, and then the publisher is June Road Press. If you Google June Road Press, sorry that I don't have the last three on that, but
It's juneroadpress.com.
.com. Okay, so yeah, that would be. I would recommend people go buy directly from her, because, yeah, and she puts a lot of care into even the envelope that arrives in the mail. So, yeah, yeah.
And if you are having difficulties, it's available on Amazon too, for those of you around the world who are
Mhm.
listening to this. But juneroadpress.com is where you can get it direct from the publisher. And that's where I got it from too. And I'm glad that I did, because there's a personal handwritten surprise in there, which was really cool. I don't know if she's still doing that, but
You might be speaking about the little note that it was by me, right? Yeah, yeah,
yep,
yeah.
I didn't want to give it away, but
Yeah.
there it is.
Yeah, I think it was the first 100 copies that sell. We might be past that point. I really haven't checked with her on the sales, but yeah, that's really neat that she was doing that, and she just asked me to write a bunch of notes to slip into the books, and so I did that for her, and um, she's obsessed with my handwriting, which is really cute.
Yeah, your handwriting is that's a lost art in itself. I mean, you send me postcards every so often, and I get them and I keep them because they're just so beautifully written. Not just from a writing standpoint, but from a visual standpoint too. I mean, your handwriting is just amazing, and I just wish more people in the world would just write letters. I send out greeting cards, at the end of the year, yeah, holiday greeting cards, and I probably get maybe one, two in response to like 50 that I sent out in the mail. But I'm trying to bring it back, the lost art of handwritten notes.
Yes, it's something that has profound meaning, in this day and age, and I do so enjoy our correspondence, because, yeah, it's funny because that we're talking about this. The other day, I was going through some old mail, and I came across the Christmas card that you sent me one
Oh
winter.
yeah.
Yeah, and I reread the note, and I thought, oh gosh, this is so beautiful, and to know that someone went to that effort of, putting pen to paper, and, sealing the envelope, and putting the stamp on the envelope, and then going to the mailbox. There's a profound amount of care and meaning, yeah, that is lost in the texting and emailing that everyone is so used to. And I really cherish our correspondence. And thanks for your kind words. Yeah, the handwriting is really. I say it's my dad. He was a calligrapher, is a calligrapher, and it's funny because I didn't grow up with him, but sometimes, yeah, the apple doesn't fall far, does it? Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. And we spoke about this a while back. You were working on a new book.
Yeah, and I am on, yeah, I'm on the 15th poem out of 81 sections of the Tao. So anyone who's read the Tao Te Ching knows that it was written in 81 sections by Lao Tzu, who, was a Taoist and had these profound insights on life and living. And and these teachings, when you read any translation that has been written so far of the Tao, and there are many, there are hundreds out there, right? You get the sense that they're aphorisms, they're teachings, right? But they're not actually. Hmm, what was I knew that there was something lacking the first time I read the Tao, in terms of my experience of like the question I asked myself was, how do I internalize this? How can I make this meaningful for me? Because these teachings are powerful, but what I realized after reflecting a little bit was that what was missing from my experience of the teachings was a certain measure of, I wouldn't say the word is beauty, but there's a way that reading something aloud, for instance, can help you internalize its message, right? And and I thought, well, as a poet, what if I brought a little bit of my own sense of beauty to these writings about the Tao? And so I started to experiment with that and discovered, wow, what if I poemized these teachings, but then furthermore, I turned them into prayers, where I could pray to what I believe to be, yeah, the Tao, which is indistinguishable from God, right? And to the Taoists, the Tao is the ultimate. It's God, and if I'm praying to the Tao, then what would that sound like? And so I sat down and started to play with that, and really had started to have some fun with it. And then I kept going, and now it's turned into this wonderful project um, that I've been sharing online, actually on my Instagram account. So people can read what I've been up to periodically when I post from the Tao there. But yeah, like I said, I'm on number 15 out of 81, so I've got a ways to go. Maybe by the end of this year, I will be somewhere with it. But yeah.
Would I be able to share one of my favorite poems from your book?
Oh wow, what an honor. Yeah, for sure, and what a lovely surprise. Yeah, since we hadn't you hadn't told me. Yeah, so sure. I would love
If
to
you're
hear
okay with
I
it.
would love to hear you read one of my poems. Yes, I'm very okay with it.
Well, I like this particular passage called Exile because this speaks directly to your experiences in Moab, Utah. And this one, yeah, it's called Exile. So it starts I have chosen and not chosen this place. It loves me and is branded to me. This sand in my eye, this wind, which speaks to me only when I've lost my way. These rains that come to batter without satisfying my thirst. Each day a visitation, the long nights of animal sleep spooling out to leave, their footprints at the door like departed guests. I push onward without you. Some days the storms throw things at me. Some days I am the storm. Some nights I am the moth who thrashes around the room, painting pieces of herself onto the globe of the lamp. We know that even stones can be borne aloft on the wind, to have the ground rise up to meet them in answer. Tell me there's a place where the past can gather. Imagine me happy. So that's my favorite entry in there.
Justin, your delivery is beautiful, and thank you so much for your reading of my poem.
What I like about poetry is people interpret it in different ways, right? People read it in different ways. And that's the beauty of the art form. That's why I don't like to read my poetry out loud. I don't like to read it out loud. I want people to read it and interpret it the way that they want to. Because for you, you wrote it with a particular message in mind. But for someone else who doesn't know that, it could have a more profound meaning or a deeper meaning or a totally different meaning. And it just takes on like this dynamic life of its own and it just grows from there. It's just that's what makes poetry work, I think.
Truly, yeah. There's such a subjectivity and a unique vocabulary of emotion that we bring to a poem in the hearing of it. And it really is a tremendous thing to be on the other side of this process where I'm listening to you read something that I wrote, and even in the reading of it, the delivery of it, to to hear a different tonality, and in that to receive a different experience of even my own ideas, right, that gave rise to the poem. Because there's a way that we wear our work, right? And that it's like a garment that when you put it on somebody else, it just brings out a different different aspect, something you see your work in a different light, and you just gave me a profound gift by sharing that. Thank you so much, and I'm in mind of the fact that you were one of the people I turned to when I was thinking about turning some of these poems into videos that I was going to then post to Instagram. And yeah, you were a tremendous help in getting me the idea phase to actual video, that I then shared, and to a lot of response. People really enjoyed the videos that I shared, and Exile was one of the first poems that I posted. And yeah, I have to give you credit for helping me to manifest those videos, because your advice was really helpful. So, um, how to get those into a different format that really brings a poem alive, especially on social media.
The subject matter that the audience heard tonight is a little bit different from the other subject matter that I tend to cover more commonly. But the reason why I wanted to bring you on here is because, I've always admired your curiosity, your tenacity, and most important, your daring ferocity to bare your heart and your soul to the world, not just through Instagram, but through your writings, through your conversations, through your thinking to strangers, to me, and now to us. And what I find particularly important about your work is you help others see things from another perspective. You help them to hear their own stories and to better understand them, to learn that they are the storytellers themselves and they're telling the stories of their lives. And I hope that you can continue to share that with other people. You can help other people in your mission, in your journey. And I look forward to many more stories from you on this program and beyond. So thank you for taking the time to come on the show.
Thank you so very much, Justin, for having me, and for the work that you do, bringing in so many different perspectives about this theme of our place in the world and our interactions with it, right? I think that your openness and your profound intelligence, which I really have to say that after speaking with you today on this interview, I get to see a different side of you too. That's an incredibly skilled, professional, polished side that I deeply admire. So thank you so much. It's a huge honor to talk today, and yeah, we will have more conversations. So.
I look forward to them. You have been listening to Terra Signals with Justin Bamforth and presented by Normal Paranormal. For more on this show and other topics of high strangeness, please visit normalparanormal.org or visit the program website at terrasignals.com.